The Truth. Part 3 of 4. David Chen agreed to meet me at a coffee shop near Brightwater's offices the next day. I brought the recorder and Elena's note, my hands shaking slightly as I set them on the small table between us. David was younger than I'd expected, probably in his early 30s, with tired eyes that suggested he'd been working too many late nights himself. "I have to admit I'm curious," he said, stirring his coffee slowly. Elena's work meant everything to her, but we really did lose all her files when her computer crashed. "If you somehow found a backup." I pressed play on the recorder. Elena's voice filled the space between us, clear and confident as she outlined her revolutionary approach to brand storytelling. David's expression changed immediately. His coffee cup froze halfway to his lips, and he stared at the recorder with growing confusion. "This is impossible," he whispered after a few minutes. I paused the recording. "What do you mean?" David set down his cup with trembling hands. "Marcus, Elena never worked on the Hartwell campaign. We've never had a client named Hartwell. In 8 years at Brightwater, I've never heard that name." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "And Elena didn't die of a heart attack while working late. She died at home in her apartment. The police found her 3 days later." The coffee shop seemed to spin around me. Everything I'd researched, every newspaper article I'd found, it was all wrong. But the article said she was found at her desk by the cleaning crew. "What article?" David pulled out his phone and started searching. Elena's death was ruled suspicious initially. She was found in her bathroom, and there were signs of a struggle. The investigation was closed after 2 weeks when they decided it was an accidental fall. But he trailed off, showing me his phone screen. "Here's the actual obituary. Look at the date." I stared at the screen. Elena Vasquez had died 8 months ago, not 6. And there was no mention of her being found at work, no mention of dedication or late nights or presentations. Just a brief notice about a life cut short, survived by her elderly mother and 2 young children. "David," I said slowly, "who sits at Elena's old desk now?" His confusion deepened. "Elena never had a permanent desk on the 23rd floor. She worked primarily with clients, spent most of her time in conference rooms or out of the office entirely. The 23rd floor is just cubicles for junior staff and interns." "Then whose desk is it?" "The one with the nameplate that says Elena Vasquez." David's face went pale. "There shouldn't be any nameplate with Elena's name. We cleared out her things from her locker months ago. She never had a permanent workspace in the building." I felt like I was falling through the floor of reality itself. If Elena hadn't worked at that desk, if she hadn't died there, then who was I seeing every night? Whose routine had I been protecting? We left the coffee shop together and went straight to the Meridian building. David used his company access card to get us to the 23rd floor during daylight hours. I led him to the corner desk, the one I'd been visiting every night for weeks. The desk was empty, no nameplate, no family photos, no personal items at all, just a standard office workspace with a computer, a phone, and a small desk lamp. David walked around it slowly, examining every detail. "This is just a standard workstation," he said. "No one's been assigned here for months. We've been short-staffed and using it for storage." He opened the desk drawers. They were filled with office supplies, extra staplers, unused notebooks, boxes of pens. But I knew what I'd seen. "David, I need to show you something." I turned on the desk lamp. It worked perfectly, casting the same warm yellow glow I'd seen every night. But in the daylight, surrounded by the ordinary bustle of office life, it looked completely normal. "Just a lamp." "I don't understand what you're trying to tell me," David said gently. "Is this some kind of memorial thing? Because honestly, we all miss Elena, but she never worked at this desk." That's when I noticed something that made my blood freeze. On the wall behind the desk, there was a small framed photo I'd never seen before. It showed the Brightwater communications staff at last year's holiday party. David pointed to a woman in the back row, laughing with her arms around 2 colleagues. "That's Elena," he said. "That's the only photo of her we kept up in the office." I stared at the photo. The woman David was pointing to was not the woman I'd been seeing in the family photos on the desk. Not the woman whose reflection I'd glimpsed in the coffee cup. The Elena in this photo had short blonde hair and a completely different face. The Elena I'd been encountering didn't exist. "David," I said, my voice barely steady, "I need to ask you something important. Has anyone else died in this building recently? Any other employees who worked late nights?" He thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Actually, yes. About 6 months ago, A woman named Sarah Mitchell. She was a junior account coordinator, worked mostly night shifts because she was going to school during the day. She was found dead at her desk one morning by the cleaning crew. Heart attack, they said. She was only 28. Very dedicated, always stayed late working on presentations. What did she look like? Dark hair, kind eyes, about average height. She had 2 young kids she was working to support while finishing her degree. Really sweet woman. Everyone liked her. He pawed. Do you ask? I pulled out my phone and showed him the photo from Elena's supposed obituary, the one I'd found in my research. Is this Sarah Mitchell? David's face went white. Yes, that's Sarah. But Marcus, how do you have her photo labeled as Elena Vasquez? And why do you think her name was Elena? The pieces were falling into place with horrible clarity. Someone had been feeding me false information. Someone had wanted me to believe the wrong story about who had died in this building and why. The newspaper article I'd found, the employee directory information, even the nameplate that appeared on the desk, none of it was real. Someone had been manipulating me from the beginning. But why? And who would go to such elaborate lengths to create a false identity for Sarah Mitchell? That's when I remembered something that made my stomach drop. The very first night I'd encountered the mysterious lamp activity, I'd filed a routine security report. Standard procedure was to scan and email all reports to the building's management company by 6 a.m. I'd been documenting everything, every strange occurrence, every pattern I'd noticed, every detail about my investigation, and someone had been reading those reports. Someone who knew exactly how to feed me information that would keep me investigating Sarah Mitchell's death while thinking I was helping Elena Vasquez complete her presentation. Someone who wanted Sarah's death to be forgotten. Someone who had killed her. I turned to David, my hands shaking as the final piece clicked into place. David, who receives copies of my security reports. But I already knew the answer, and I knew he was standing right behind me. That's it for part 3. Follow Untold Lores for part 4. Like and subscribe for daily stories.